Close your eyes for a moment and imagine standing at the edge of an ocean. Not the ocean as it is today, with its familiar rhythms and recognizable inhabitants, but an ocean from a time so distant that the very continents beneath your feet would be unrecognizable. An ocean from before the dinosaurs walked, before the first forests grew, before fish had jaws or creatures crawled onto land. In that ancient sea, life was already stirring, already thriving, already perfecting forms that would endure for hundreds of millions of years. Tonight, we're going to meet the survivors, the ancients, the creatures whose lineages stretch back so far into the depths of time that they make even the oldest human civilizations seem like the blink of an eye. Some of these organisms have witnessed nearly the entire history of complex life on Earth. Others have survived catastrophes that wiped out 90% of all species. And a few have changed so little over hundreds of millions of years that if you could travel back to the Cambrian seas, you would recognize them swimming there in the dim, ancient light. Welcome to Bedtime Biology, where science meets serenity. Each night, we explore the quiet wonders of the natural world, calming your mind and sparking your curiosity. If you like these videos, please consider subscribing to the channel and commenting below if you have any feedback or suggestions for topics of future episodes. The story we're about to unfold is one of almost unimaginable endurance. It's a story that spans not decades or centuries, but eons. 3.5 billion years of history compressed into the creatures still living on our planet today. As we journey through this narrative, we'll discover that the oldest life forms on Earth aren't always the largest or the most complex. Often, they're the simplest, the ones that found a successful strategy early and never needed to change. The ones that learned to survive in ways so fundamental, so perfectly suited to their environments, that evolution itself seemed to pause and say, "This works. This will last." But first, we need to recalibrate our sense of time. When we talk about creatures that have existed for hundreds of millions of years, we're discussing timescales that dwarf human comprehension. If the entire history of Earth were compressed into a single year, with our planet forming on January 1st, modern humans wouldn't appear until December 31st at about 11:58 in the evening. The creatures we're going to meet tonight, some of them showed up in March, and they're still here, swimming and creeping and drifting through the same waters, largely unchanged. Let's begin our journey at the very edge of what we consider animal life, in the realm of the microscopic, where the boundary between the living and the geological becomes beautifully blurred. 3.5 billion years ago, Earth was a vastly different planet. The atmosphere contained almost no oxygen. The sun shone down on barren rock and empty seas, and yet, in those seas, something remarkable was happening. Tiny organisms, smaller than a single cell in your body, were beginning to change the world forever. These organisms were cyanobacteria, sometimes called blue-green algae, though they're not algae at all. They're bacteria, prokaryotes, cells without a nucleus. But despite their simplicity, they possessed a chemical trick that would transform the entire planet. They could photosynthesize. They could take sunlight, water, and carbon dioxide and turn them into food, releasing oxygen as a waste product. Today, we take oxygen for granted. We breathe it without thinking, roughly 20,000 times a day. But for most of Earth's history, oxygen was toxic, a poison that would have killed most living things. The cyanobacteria didn't seem to mind. They multiplied in vast numbers, forming colonies that covered the shallow seafloors of the ancient world. And as they photosynthesized, they pumped oxygen into the water and, eventually, into the air. This process didn't happen overnight. It took hundreds of millions of years. At first, the oxygen reacted with iron dissolved in the ocean, creating rust that settled to the bottom in distinctive layers we can still see today. Banded iron formations that give us a glimpse into those ancient seas. But around 2.4 billion years ago, something shifted. The ocean could hold no more dissolved iron. The oxygen began to escape into the atmosphere, and the Great Oxygenation Event began. This event was catastrophic for most life on Earth at the time. Oxygen, so essential to us, was deadly to the anaerobic organisms that had dominated the planet. It caused what some scientists call Earth's first mass extinction. But it also opened up new possibilities. With oxygen in the atmosphere, new forms of life could evolve. Life that could use oxygen to power more complex metabolisms, to grow larger, to move faster, to think. But the cyanobacteria themselves, they didn't change much at all. The fossils we find from 3.5 billion years ago look remarkably similar to cyanobacteria living today. They found their niche, their perfect strategy, and they've been following it ever since. The most remarkable testament to their endurance isn't found in museum displays or microscope slides. It's found in living structures called stromatolites, picture mounds or columns of rock rising from shallow water, layer upon layer of mineral deposits binding sand and sediment together. They look geological, like natural formations shaped by waves and currents, but they're biological. They're alive. Stromatolites form when cyanobacteria grow in thin mats across surfaces, trapping sediment and minerals. The bacteria photosynthesize, which changes the chemistry of the water around them, causing calcium carbonate to precipitate. Each layer represents a growth period, seasons and years compressed into laminated stone. As the bacteria grow upward, they leave the lower layers behind, creating a permanent record of their activity. These structures first appeared in the fossil record during the Archean Eon, 3.5 billion years ago. For billions of years, they were among the most common features of Earth's shallow seas. They peaked about 1.25 billion years ago, building reefs that stretched for miles. Then, around the time of the Cambrian explosion, when animals began to diversify rapidly, stromatolites started to decline. Grazing animals ate the bacterial mats. Burrowing creatures disrupted the sediment. The age of stromatolites was ending, except it wasn't. Not entirely. In a few rare places on Earth, stromatolites still grow today, in environments so harsh that few animals can survive to graze on them. The most famous of these places is Shark Bay in Western Australia, where hypersaline water creates a refuge for these ancient builders. The stromatolites there grow slowly, adding perhaps a millimeter a year, but they're unmistakably the same structures that dominated Earth's shores billions of years ago. To stand at the edge of Shark Bay and look at these rocky mounds is to see a living connection to the deepest past, to a time before animals, before plants, before anything we would recognize as complex life. The cyanobacteria building those stromatolites today are following the same basic life plan their ancestors followed when Earth was young. They photosynthesize, they trap sediment, they build upward, layer by patient layer, creating stone from sunlight and chemistry and time. In many ways, cyanobacteria represent the ultimate success story of life on Earth. They terraformed an entire planet. They created the oxygen-rich atmosphere that made all subsequent life possible. They survived countless catastrophes, from volcanic eruptions to asteroid impacts to ice ages that turned Earth into a frozen snowball. And through it all, they remained fundamentally unchanged, because what they were doing worked. What they were doing was perfect. When scientists search for life on other planets, they often look for signs of oxygen in the atmosphere. If they find it, they'll know to look for something like cyanobacteria, some photosynthesizing organism pumping out oxygen as it converts starlight into energy. And if they find such creatures, those alien life forms will likely follow the same basic strategy that Earth's cyanobacteria perfected billions of years ago. Because some solutions are universal, some strategies work anywhere there's light and water and the chemistry of life. The stromatolites at Shark Bay fizz gently in the sunlight, releasing tiny bubbles of oxygen, just as their ancestors did when Earth was young and empty and waiting to be filled with life. If we travel forward through deep time, past the age when stromatolites ruled the seas, we eventually arrive at a crucial threshold, a moment when life crossed from simple to complex, from single cells working alone to cells cooperating in organized bodies. This transition happened somewhere around 600 million years ago, in an era called the Ediacaran, and the creatures that emerged from it represented something entirely new in the history of Earth. They were animals. But what were the first animals? What did they look like? For decades, this question puzzled scientists. The answer, it turns out, lies with creatures so simple they almost don't seem like animals at all. They have no brain, no heart, no eyes, no organs of any kind. They spend their entire adult lives anchored in one spot, filtering food from the water flowing through their bodies. They are sponges. Sponges, or poriferans, are about as basic as animal life gets. A sponge's body is little more than a collection of cells, organized into a simple structure with pores. Water flows in through these tiny openings, bringing oxygen and food particles, then flows out through larger openings called oscula. The cells lining the internal chambers have whip-like flagella that beat constantly, creating currents that pull water through the sponge's body. It's an efficient system, refined to perfection over hundreds of millions of years. The earliest evidence of sponge-like animals comes from rocks dated to around 600 million years ago, discovered in southern China. These fossils are tiny, barely larger than a millimeter, but they show the unmistakable features of sponges, porous surfaces, internal chambers, the basic architecture that defines the group. Even more remarkably, scientists have found chemical biomarkers, specific molecules that only sponges produce, in rocks dating back 635 to 660 million years ago. These molecular fossils, found in ancient rocks from Oman, Siberia, and India, provide strong evidence that sponges were thriving in Earth's oceans long before the Cambrian explosion. The Cambrian explosion, which began about 540 million years ago, was a period of rapid diversification when most major animal groups first appeared in the fossil record. It's sometimes called evolution's Big Bang, a time when the sea suddenly teemed with an incredible variety of creatures: trilobites with their compound eyes, primitive fish, early arthropods, and complex predators. The suddenness of this explosion puzzled Charles Darwin himself. Where were the ancestors? Where were the simpler forms that must have preceded this burst of diversity? Sponges provide part of the answer. They were already there, already thriving, already perfected in their simple way. While other animals were experimenting with elaborate body plans and complex organs, sponges were content to filter feed, to grow and reproduce with the minimum of fuss. And this strategy worked spectacularly well. Sponges have survived every mass extinction event. They've outlasted countless more complex creatures. Today, there are roughly 8,000 to 10,000 species of sponges living in oceans around the world, from shallow tropical reefs to the deepest ocean trenches. Some individual sponges live for extraordinary lengths of time. Glass sponges, which build their skeletons from silicon dioxide, the same material as glass, can live for thousands of years. Scientists have found specimens in the East China Sea, estimated to be over 11,000 years old. These ancient individuals have been filtering water continuously since the end of the last ice age, through the entire span of human civilization. What's remarkable about sponges isn't just their age or their longevity, it's their fundamental success despite their simplicity. They have no nervous system, yet they can respond to their environment. They have no muscles, yet their cells can contract to regulate water flow. They have no immune system in the traditional sense, yet they produce powerful chemical compounds that protect them from disease and predators. Many of these compounds have proven useful to humans. Sponge-derived chemicals are being studied as potential antibiotics, anti-cancer agents, and anti-inflammatory drugs. Sponges also possess a remarkable ability to regenerate. If you dissociate a sponge, separating it into individual cells, those cells can find each other again and reassemble into a new sponge. It's as if the sponge exists as both an individual and a community, cells that know how to work together even when separated. This ability hints at how multicellular life might have first evolved. Simple cells that discovered the advantages of cooperation and organization. In the hierarchy of life, sponges occupy a special place. Genetic studies consistently place them as the first branch to diverge from the ancestral line that led to all other animals. In the language of evolution, they're the sister group to everything else, to jellyfish and worms, to insects and fish, to dinosaurs and humans. Every complex feature we associate with animal life, from nervous systems to muscles to specialized organs, evolved after sponges had already split off and gone their own way. And yet, for all their primitiveness, sponges are thoroughly modern creatures, superbly adapted to their environments. They're found in every ocean, from the sunlit shallows to the pitch-black depths where no light penetrates. They've colonized freshwater lakes and rivers. Some grow in caves, sustained by the calcium-rich water dripping from above. Others form massive barrel shapes on coral reefs, large enough for a diver to fit inside. The next time you see a sponge, whether it's a delicate vase shape, or a massive barrel, or a thin incrustation on a rock, remember that you're looking at a body plan that has barely changed in over 500 million years. You're looking at a design so successful, so perfectly suited to the task of filtering ocean water, that evolution saw no reason to improve upon it. The sponge's simplicity is its strength. Its lack of complexity is its superpower. In the quiet depths where sponges live, water flows endlessly through their bodies, bringing food and oxygen, carrying away waste. The rhythm is constant, unchanging, the same rhythm that sustained their ancestors 600 million years ago, the same rhythm that will sustain their descendants for millions of years to come. Move forward another 150 million years or so, and the seas are changing. The Cambrian explosion is underway. The ocean floor that was once home to simple creatures and stromatolites is now a battleground of evolution, with predators and prey locked in an ancient arms race. This is when some of the most recognizable fossils first appear. Creatures with hard shells and protective armor. Creatures built to survive in a suddenly dangerous world. Among these armored pioneers is a creature that looks, at first glance, like a crab. It has a hard, dome-shaped shell. It scuttles across the seafloor on jointed legs. It has a long, spike-like tail. But despite appearances, this creature isn't a crab at all. It's more closely related to spiders and scorpions. It's a horseshoe crab, and its lineage reaches back 445 million years, to the early Ordovician period. The oldest horseshoe crab fossils were discovered in rocks from Manitoba, Canada. These specimens, belonging to a species called Lunataspis aurora, date back 445 million years. What's extraordinary is how similar they look to modern horseshoe crabs. The basic body plan was already in place. The rounded carapace, the multiple legs, the telson or tail spine. Evolution, it seems, found a design that worked and saw little reason to change it. Horseshoe crabs are often called living fossils, a term that's somewhat misleading because it suggests they're somehow frozen in time, unchanging relics. The truth is more nuanced. Their soft tissues have certainly evolved. Their genetics have changed. But their outward form, the shape and structure visible in the fossil record, has remained remarkably stable for hundreds of millions of years. This stability is a testament to how well adapted they were from the beginning. These creatures have witnessed an astonishing span of Earth's history. When the first horseshoe crabs appeared, life on land consisted of little more than primitive plants and arthropods. There were no forests, no amphibians, no reptiles, certainly no dinosaurs. The horseshoe crabs swam in those ancient seas for about 300 million years before the first dinosaurs appeared. They were already ancient when Tyrannosaurus rex walked the earth. They survived the mass extinction that killed the dinosaurs and continued swimming, largely unchanged, into the modern era. They've survived all 5 major mass extinction events. The end Ordovician extinction, 444 million years ago. The late Devonian extinction, 375 million years ago. The Permian Triassic extinction, the worst of them all, which killed 96% of all marine species 252 million years ago. The Triassic-Jurassic extinction, 201 million years ago. And the Cretaceous-Paleogene extinction, 66 million years ago, which ended the age of dinosaurs. Through all of these catastrophes, through asteroid impacts and volcanic eruptions and climate shifts that reshaped the world, horseshoe crabs persisted. What makes them so resilient? Part of the answer lies in their adaptability. Although they're marine creatures, horseshoe crabs can tolerate a wide range of salinities. They thrive in brackish estuaries where freshwater rivers meet the sea. This flexibility allowed them to survive in changing environments when purely marine or purely freshwater species went extinct. They're also generalists in their diet, eating worms, mollusks, and anything else they can find on the muddy bottom. Another key to their success is their life cycle. Every spring, horseshoe crabs gather on beaches to spawn, the females digging nests in the sand and laying thousands of tiny green eggs, the males fertilizing them. This behavior provides a crucial food source for migrating shorebirds, particularly the red knot, which times its migration to coincide with horseshoe crab spawning season. The relationship between horseshoe crabs and shorebirds has existed for millennia, a connection between ancient arthropods and modern birds. Horseshoe crabs have also proven valuable to humans, though in a way that threatens their survival. Their blood is blue, coloured by copper-based hemocyanin instead of iron-based hemoglobin. This blood contains cells called amebocytes that clot when exposed to bacterial endotoxins. This property led to the development of limulus amebocyte lysate, or LAL, a substance used to test medical equipment and drugs for contamination. Every year, hundreds of thousands of horseshoe crabs are caught, bled, and released. Many don't survive the process. The biomedical industry's demand for horseshoe crab blood has placed new pressure on populations already stressed by habitat loss and overfishing. But even facing these modern threats, horseshoe crabs endure. 4 species survive today. Limulus polyphemus lives along the Atlantic coast of North America, from Maine to the Gulf of Mexico. 3 Asian species, the mangrove horseshoe crab, the tri-spine horseshoe crab, and the Indo-Pacific horseshoe crab, inhabit the coasts of South and Southeast Asia. These creatures move slowly across the seafloor, their ancient form unchanged by the passage of eons. They have compound eyes that can detect ultraviolet light. Their rods and cones are 100 times larger than human photoreceptors, making their eyes 1,000,000 times more sensitive at night than during the day. They use this sensitivity to navigate the dark ocean depths where they spend much of their time. When a horseshoe crab is flipped upside down by a wave, it uses its telson, that long spike of odd tail, to right itself. The telson isn't a weapon or a stinger. It's a tool, a lever that allows the crab to flip back over and continue on its way. It's a simple solution, refined over hundreds of millions of years, perfectly suited to its purpose. To watch a horseshoe crab crawl across a beach is to watch deep time in motion. Every awkward step, every slow movement, echoes movements made by ancestors in seas long vanished. These creatures are living links to the Paleozoic, to a time before the supercontinent Pangaea formed, before the Appalachian Mountains rose, before the Atlantic Ocean existed. They connect us to an almost unimaginable past, and they do so simply by continuing to exist, continuing to spawn on beaches as they have for 400 million years. In the quiet shallows where horseshoe crabs gather each spring, time seems to slow down, compressed and stretched simultaneously. The present moment connects directly to the Ordovician seas, an unbroken thread of survival stretching across nearly 500 million years. Not all ancient creatures wear armor or build shells. Some of the oldest animals on Earth are among the most delicate, their bodies little more than jelly held together by thin membranes. They drift through the ocean on gentle currents, pulsing slowly, trailing tentacles that sting unwary prey. They are cnidarians, jellyfish, and their relatives, and they've been swimming Earth's oceans for over 500 million years. Jellyfish are frustratingly difficult to study in the fossil record. Unlike animals with bones or shells, jellyfish rarely leave fossils behind. When they die, their soft bodies decay quickly, usually disappearing without a trace. only under the most exceptional circumstances, when an animal is buried rapidly in fine sediment that preserves even delicate structures, can a jellyfish fossilize. Such preservation is so rare that every jellyfish fossil is a treasure, a glimpse into a moment frozen in time. The oldest confirmed jellyfish fossils come from the Burgess Shale, a site high in the Canadian Rockies that preserves Middle Cambrian fauna from 505 million years ago. The Burgess Shale is famous for its exceptional preservation. Creatures that would normally leave no trace were buried by underwater avalanches, fine mud trapping them between layers that eventually turned to stone. When paleontologists split these rocks open, they find intricate details, the outline of soft bodies, the trace of tentacles, even the hint of internal organs. In 2007, researchers described jellyfish fossils from the Burgess Shale that pushed the known history of these creatures back to over 500 million years ago. The fossils showed bell-shaped bodies and tentacles, features identical to modern jellyfish. Then, in 2023, scientists announced an even more remarkable discovery: a new species called Burgessa medusa phasmiformis, found in the same ancient rocks. This jellyfish was large, some specimens measuring over 20 centimeters long. It had a typical saucer or bell-shaped body and long tentacles. By comparison with modern jellyfish, it would have been a capable swimmer, an active predator in the Cambrian seas. The discovery of Burgessa medusa revealed something important about ancient ecosystems. Scientists had thought that the top predators in the Cambrian Ocean were large arthropods like Anomalocaris, strange creatures with compound eyes and grasping appendages. But the presence of large swimming jellyfish suggests the food web was more complex than previously believed. Jellyfish would have competed with arthropods for prey, adding another layer to the intricate web of predator and prey. But while these fossils are spectacular, they represent only the free-swimming medusa stage of the cnidarian life cycle. Cnidarians, which include not just jellyfish, but also sea anemones, corals, and hydroids, often have complex life cycles involving two body forms. The polyp is a vase-shaped body, usually attached to the seafloor, that uses tentacles to capture passing food. The medusa is the bell-shaped, free-swimming form we recognize as a jellyfish. Some cnidarians only ever exist as polyps. Others cycle between both forms, polyps reproducing asexually to create medusas, medusas reproducing sexually to create polyps. Fossilized polyps have been found in rocks dating back 560 million years ago, even earlier than the Burgessa medusa medusas. This suggests that cnidarians were already diverse and established by the time the Cambrian explosion began. They were among the earliest animals to develop organized tissues, their bodies composed of distinct layers of cells, an outer epidermis and an inner gastrodermis, with a jelly-like mesoglia between. They were also among the first animals known to have a nervous system, albeit a simple one, a nerve net that coordinates movement and responses to stimuli. Their most distinctive feature is the nematocyst, a specialized stinging cell unique to cyanidarians. Each nematocyst is like a tiny harpoon. When triggered by touch or chemical signals, it explosively everts, shooting out a barbed thread that can inject venom. This happens in about 700 nanoseconds, one of the fastest movements in the animal kingdom. The venom can paralyze small prey, or, in some species, deliver a painful sting to potential predators or unlucky swimmers. Jellyfish were probably the first muscle-powered swimmers in the open ocean. Before jellyfish, most marine creatures either drifted passively or crawled along the seafloor. The ability to swim actively, to pulse through the water and change direction at will, represented a major evolutionary innovation. This mobility allowed jellyfish to exploit new environments, to hunt in the water column, to escape predators, to disperse their offspring across vast distances. The success of jellyfish is evident in their global distribution. They're found in every ocean, from the surface to the deepest trenches, from the Arctic to the tropics. Some species live in freshwater lakes. They range in size from tiny hydrozoans, barely a millimeter across, to lion's mane jellyfish, with bells over 2 meters in diameter, and tentacles extending 30 meters or more. Despite their ancient lineage, jellyfish continue to thrive in the modern ocean. In fact, some scientists worry that jellyfish populations are increasing due to overfishing, which removes their predators and competitors, and warming ocean temperatures, which favor their reproduction. In some regions, massive jellyfish blooms have clogged fishing nets, stung countless swimmers, and even shut down power plants by blocking seawater intake pipes. This adaptability, this ability to thrive in changing conditions, is part of what makes jellyfish such successful survivors. They're generalists, able to eat a wide variety of prey. They reproduce prolifically, some species producing thousands of offspring, and their simple body plan requires relatively little energy to maintain, allowing them to survive even in nutrient-poor waters. There's something almost hypnotic about watching jellyfish pulse through the water, their bells contracting rhythmically, their tentacles trailing behind like ribbons. They move with a grace that seems timeless, ancient and modern simultaneously. When you watch a jellyfish drift past in an aquarium or encounter one in the ocean, you're witnessing a form of life that's barely changed since the Cambrian seas, a survivor that's seen the rise and fall of countless other species, a creature perfectly adapted to a lifestyle of gentle drifting and patient hunting. In the dark depths and sunlit shallows, jellyfish continue their ancient dance, pulsing and drifting, stinging and feeding, reproducing and dispersing, carrying forward a body plan that has worked for over 500 million years. While jellyfish drifted through the water column and horseshoe crabs crawled across the seafloor, another group of ancient creatures was perfecting a very different lifestyle. They were cephalopods, relatives of modern octopuses and squid. But unlike their soft-bodied descendants, these early cephalopods built elaborate shells, spiraled chambers of calcium carbonate that housed their bodies and controlled their buoyancy. They were nautiloids, and they appeared in the late Cambrian period, over 500 million years ago. The earliest nautiloids had straight, cone-shaped shells, simple tubes divided internally into chambers by thin walls called septa. A strand of living tissue called the siphuncle ran through all the chambers, allowing the animal to adjust the gas and liquid content in each chamber, controlling its buoyancy with precision. By adding gas to the chambers, a nautiloid could become more buoyant and rise in the water. By adding liquid, it could sink. This ability to control depth gave nautiloids a huge advantage over other animals of the time. By the Ordovician period, about 500 million years ago, nautiloids had diversified into hundreds of species. Some remained straight-shelled, growing to enormous sizes. The giant Endosaurid Camaracoris had a shell over 9 meters long, making it one of the largest predators of the Ordovician seas. Others developed coiled shells, spiraling in a flat plane or in 3 dimensions, forms that strengthened the shell and made the animal more maneuverable. These ancient nautiloids dominated the oceans for hundreds of millions of years. They were the apex predators of their time, the sharks and whales of the Paleozoic seas. Their only competitors were other cephalopods, relatives called ammonoids, that appeared in the Devonian period and diversified into thousands of species. For over 300 million years, nautiloids and ammonoids shared the oceans, both groups building intricate shells, both groups refining their designs through countless generations. Then came the Cretaceous-Paleogene extinction, the asteroid impact 66 million years ago that killed the dinosaurs and countless other species. The ammonoids, which had been hugely successful and diverse, went completely extinct. Not a single species survived. The nautiloids, however, made it through, though just barely. Only one lineage survived the extinction event. From that single surviving group came all modern nautiluses. Today, there are only a handful of nautilus species, all living in the Pacific and Indian Oceans, usually at depths of several hundred meters. They're most active at night, when they rise toward the surface to hunt. During the day, they sink back into the depths to rest. This daily migration, up at night, down during the day, is a rhythm they've likely followed for millions of years. A nautilus's shell is a masterpiece of natural engineering. It's divided into dozens of chambers, each one sealed off by a septum as the animal grows and moves into a larger chamber at the shell's opening. The chambers are filled with a mixture of gas and liquid, and the nautilus can adjust this mixture to control its depth. The sipuncle, a thin tube of tissue running through all the chambers, manages this process, pumping liquid in or out as needed. The shell itself is beautiful, smooth and white on the outside, pearly and iridescent on the inside. The inner surface is nacre, or mother of pearl, the same material that forms pearls in oysters. When cut in cross-section, a nautilus shell reveals the famous spiral pattern, a logarithmic curve that appears again and again in nature, in snail shells and ram's horns, in galaxies and hurricanes. Unlike their relatives, the octopuses and squid, which lost their external shells millions of years ago, nautiluses retained this ancient design. They also retained many other primitive features. Their eyes are simple, working like pinhole cameras, rather than the sophisticated lens eyes of squid and octopuses. They lack the suckers, found on other cephalopods' tentacles, using instead sticky ridges to grip prey. They have far more tentacles than their modern relatives, up to 90 compared to 8 or 10 in squid and octopuses. In many ways, nautiluses represent a glimpse into the past, a window onto what ancient cephalopods might have been like. They're slow swimmers, propelling themselves by jet propulsion, taking water into their shell cavity, and then expelling it through a funnel. They feed on small fish, crustaceans, and carrion, using their tentacles to capture prey and their beak, a hard structure like a parrot's beak, to crack shells and tear flesh. Nautiluses are remarkably long-lived for cephalopods. Most squid and octopuses live only a year or two, growing fast and dying young. Nautiluses, by contrast, can live for 20 years or more. They grow slowly, taking over a decade to reach sexual maturity. This slow life history, combined with their limited geographic range, makes them vulnerable to overfishing. Their beautiful shells are prized by collectors, and nautilus populations have declined in many areas. Watching a nautilus swim in an aquarium is like watching a ghost from the Paleozoic. The slow, pulsing movement, the shell catching the light, the tentacles waving gently. Everything about the animal speaks of deep time, of survival against enormous odds, of a design so perfectly suited to its niche that it needed almost no modification for hundreds of millions of years. In the deep waters where nautiluses live, far below the sunlit surface, these living fossils continue their ancient routines, rising and sinking with the rhythm of day and night, hunting and breeding and growing, carrying forward a lineage that stretches back to the dawn of complex life in the sea. Not all of Earth's oldest creatures are measured in meters or even centimeters. Some of the most remarkable survivors are so small you'd need a microscope to see them properly. They're called tardigrades, and despite being barely visible to the naked eye, they've survived for approximately 600 million years, making them contemporaries of the earliest complex animals. Tardigrades are sometimes called water bears or moss piglets, names that capture their endearing appearance. Under a microscope, they look like plump little bears with 8 stubby legs, each leg tipped with claws. They walk with a slow, lumbering gait that seems almost comical, given their microscopic size. Most are between 300 and 500 micrometers long, about half the width of a millimeter, though some species can grow larger. These tiny animals are found almost everywhere on Earth. They live in ocean sediments and freshwater streams, but they're most common in terrestrial habitats, particularly in films of water on mosses, lichens, and leaf litter. Anywhere there's moisture, even temporary moisture, there might be tardigrades. They've been found on mountaintops over 6,000 meters high and in ocean trenches over 4,000 meters deep. They live in hot springs and in Antarctic ice. They're in your backyard, probably on any patch of moss you can find. The reason tardigrades can live in such diverse and extreme environments is their most remarkable ability. They can survive almost anything. When conditions become unfavorable, when their habitat dries out or gets too cold or too hot, tardigrades enter a state called cryptobiosis. They expel almost all the water from their bodies, pull in their heads and legs, and curl into a tiny ball called a ton. In this state, their metabolism drops to less than 1/10,000th of normal. They are, for all practical purposes, dead. But they're not dead. They're waiting, and they can wait for a very long time. Tardigrades in the ton state have survived for decades, and then revived when rehydrated. One study found moss that had been stored in a museum for over 100 years. When researchers moistened the moss, tardigrades emerged and began moving and eating as if nothing had happened. The extremes tardigrades can survive are almost absurd. They can withstand temperatures from just above absolute zero, negative 273 degrees Celsius to 150 degrees Celsius, well above the boiling point of water. They can survive pressures 6 times greater than those at the bottom of the deepest ocean trench. They can endure radiation doses thousands of times higher than what would kill a human. They've been frozen, boiled, crushed, irradiated, and exposed to toxic chemicals, and still they survive. Perhaps most remarkably, tardigrades have survived in outer space. In 2007, the European Space Agency sent dehydrated tardigrades into low Earth orbit as part of an experiment. For 10 days, the tardigrades were exposed to the vacuum of space and to solar radiation. When brought back to Earth and rehydrated, more than 68% of the samples protected from ultraviolet radiation revived. Many of them produced viable offspring. Some tardigrades were exposed to both vacuum and ultraviolet radiation, an even harsher test, and a few of those survived too. The mechanisms behind this extraordinary resilience are only recently becoming clear. Tardigrades produce special proteins in response to desiccation. Some of these proteins are unique to tardigrades. They seem to work by protecting the animal's cells and DNA from damage. When a tardigrade dries out, these proteins form a glass-like matrix inside the cells, preserving cellular structures and preventing them from collapsing. Other proteins associate with cell membranes, stabilizing them and preventing damage. Tardigrades also have exceptional DNA repair mechanisms. When exposed to high levels of radiation, their DNA breaks apart, but they can reassemble it. They have genes that code for damage suppressor proteins, which protect DNA from harmful ionizing radiation. This ability to repair genetic damage is part of what allows them to survive extreme conditions that would be lethal to other organisms. Despite all these superpowers, tardigrades are not immortal. In their active state, feeding and reproducing, they typically live only a few months. It's only in cryptobiosis that they can persist for years or decades. And while they can survive almost any extreme condition briefly, prolonged exposure can kill them. They're tough, but they're not invincible. What tardigrades teach us is that survival doesn't always require size or strength or speed. Sometimes it requires the ability to wait, to shut down and endure until conditions improve. This strategy has served tardigrades well for 600 million years, through ice ages and mass extinctions, through the rise and fall of countless other species. The fossil record of tardigrades is sparse because their soft bodies rarely fossilize. But the few specimens that have been found show that they've changed remarkably little over time. A tardigrade from the Cambrian period would be recognizable as a tardigrade today. They found their niche, their successful strategy, and they've followed it ever since. In a world of constant change, of shifting climates and evolving predators and mass extinctions, tardigrades represent a different approach. They don't fight change. They wait it out. They reduce themselves to almost nothing, to a seed of life waiting for the right moment to bloom again. And when that moment comes, when the rain returns, or the ice melts, or the radiation fades, they wake up and carry on as if no time has passed at all. On moss-covered rocks and in muddy puddles, in the soil beneath your feet and the gutters on your roof, tardigrades continue their ancient existence, waiting and waking and waiting again, masters of endurance in a world that never stops changing. If we turn from the microscopic to the massive, from creatures barely visible to the naked eye, to predators as long as a car, we arrive at perhaps the most remarkable survival story of all. Deep in the cold, dark waters of the Arctic and North Atlantic, there swims a shark that may live longer than any other vertebrate on Earth. It grows so slowly that it doesn't reach sexual maturity for over a century. Some individuals alive today may have been born before the American Revolution. This is the Greenland shark, and it represents the extreme end of longevity in the animal kingdom. Greenland sharks are large animals, typically growing to about 4 to 5 meters in length, though some specimens have been measured at over 6 meters. They're heavy-bodied and sluggish, swimming at less than 3 kilometers per hour, one of the slowest swimming speeds of any fish. They live in cold, deep water, usually between 200 and 2,000 meters deep, though they've been recorded as deep as 2,200 meters. The water at these depths is dark and near freezing, barely above 0 degrees Celsius year-round. For a long time, scientists suspected that Greenland sharks lived for a very long time, but they had no way to determine their exact age. Unlike most fish, which have hard structures like scales or fin spines that show growth rings similar to tree rings, Greenland sharks have soft cartilage throughout their bodies. Their vertebrae don't form the distinct growth bands that scientists use to age other sharks. They seemed to be effectively unageable. Then, a team of researchers from Denmark developed a novel approach. They examined the lenses of sharks' eyes. The center of an eye lens forms before birth and remains unchanged throughout the animal's life, adding layers like an onion as the animal grows. By carefully dissecting the lens and examining the proteins at its core, scientists could determine when those proteins were formed. Using radiocarbon dating techniques, including looking for traces of carbon-14 from nuclear weapons testing in the 1950s, they could estimate when each shark was born. The results were astonishing. The largest shark in the study, a 5-meter female, was estimated to be 392 years old, give or take 120 years. Even at the lower end of the estimate, this shark would have been over 270 years old, making it older than any other known vertebrate. At the upper end, it could have been born in the early 1600s, during the reign of King James I of England, at a time when Jamestown was just being established in Virginia. This extraordinary longevity appears to be linked to the shark's extremely slow growth rate and metabolism. Greenland sharks grow at roughly 1 centimeter per year, a glacial pace even by shark standards. This slow growth is probably an adaptation to the cold, deep environment where they live. Cold water slows metabolic processes, and in the permanent chill of the Arctic depths, everything happens more slowly. Growth, digestion, movement, even aging itself. The sharks don't reach sexual maturity until they're at least 150 years old, when females measure around 4 meters and males around 3 meters. This means that a Greenland shark alive today may have been swimming through the Arctic waters for over a century before it was old enough to reproduce. And once it reaches maturity, it may continue reproducing for another 200 years or more. What does a Greenland shark do with 400 years? It swims slowly through the dark, cold depths, hunting for food. Greenland sharks are opportunistic predators and scavengers. They eat fish, including cod, halibut, and salmon. They eat squid and smaller sharks. They've been found with seal parts in their stomachs, though it's unclear whether they hunt healthy seals or scavenge dead ones. Some sharks have been found with the remains of caribou, polar bears, and horses in their stomachs, animals that must have fallen through the ice or washed out to sea after death. Their hunting strategy seems to rely on stealth and patience. They're too slow to chase down healthy prey, so they likely ambush sleeping or injured animals, or they scavenge carcasses that sink to the seafloor. In the pitch-black depths, where they spend much of their time, vision is of limited use anyway. Many Greenland sharks are partially or completely blind, their eyes clouded by parasitic copepods that attach to the corneas. These tiny crustaceans, called Omatoceuta elongata, damage the shark's eyes, and leave scar tissue. But the sharks don't seem to mind much. They rely on other senses, on smell, and on sensing vibrations and electrical fields in the water to find food in the darkness. The discovery of the Greenland shark's extreme longevity raises fascinating questions about aging. Why do some animals live so long, while others live such short lives? What genetic and cellular mechanisms allow a Greenland shark to survive for 4 centuries when most fish live only a few years? Recent genome sequencing has revealed that Greenland sharks have an unusually large genome, and that genes involved in DNA repair may have proliferated in their DNA, helping them maintain genetic integrity over such long lifespans. But this longevity also makes Greenland sharks vulnerable. Because they grow so slowly and reproduce so late in life, their populations can't recover quickly from overfishing. For decades in the early 20th century, Greenland sharks were hunted for their liver oil, which was used as industrial lubricant and lamp fuel. The fishery ended in the 1960s, but populations may still be recovering. Today, the main threat is bycatch, sharks accidentally caught in nets and on lines meant for other species. Given how long it takes a Greenland shark to reach reproductive age, every death represents a significant loss to the population. There's something profoundly moving about the idea of an animal that lives for 400 years. Think of the changes it has witnessed. A Greenland shark born in the early 1600s would have been swimming when Shakespeare's plays were first performed, when Galileo looked through his telescope, when the Pilgrims landed at Plymouth Rock. It would have lived through the Age of Enlightenment, the American and French Revolutions, the Industrial Revolution, both World Wars, the Space Age, and into the digital era. And through all of this, the shark simply continued its patient existence in the dark, cold depths, hunting and growing and reproducing, following the same patterns its ancestors followed millions of years before humans ever existed. In the frigid waters of the Arctic, beneath ice floes and in trenches far from any light, Greenland sharks continue their slow, ancient journeys, living links to centuries past, creatures that remind us that time moves differently in the deep ocean, that patience and endurance can stretch across spans we can barely comprehend. What can we learn from Earth's oldest creatures? What do these survivors, these living fossils and ancient lineages, teach us about life itself? First, they teach us that success isn't always about being the biggest, the fastest, or the strongest. The creatures that have endured for hundreds of millions of years are often the simplest, the most adaptable, the ones that found a niche and perfected it. Cyanobacteria didn't need complexity to transform an entire planet. Sponges didn't need brains or muscles to outlast countless more sophisticated creatures. Sometimes, the best strategy is the simplest one. They teach us about resilience. Horseshoe crabs survived 5 mass extinctions. Tardigrades can shut down completely and wait out almost any catastrophe. Jellyfish thrived through the rise and fall of entire ecosystems. These creatures show us that survival often depends not on avoiding hardship, but on enduring it, on having mechanisms to weather storms and emerge on the other side. They teach us about deep time, about scales of existence that dwarf human lifespans and human civilizations. When we look at a cyanobacterium building stromatolites today, using the same basic processes its ancestors used 3.5 billion years ago, we're forced to reckon with the vastness of Earth's history. We're a blink, a moment, a brief spark in a story that stretches across eons. They also teach us about the importance of preserving what remains. Many of these ancient lineages are threatened today by human activities. Horseshoe crabs are harvested for their blood and caught as bycatch. Nautiluses are collected for their shells. Greenland sharks are accidentally caught in fishing gear. Climate change threatens stromatolite building cyanobacteria in Shark Bay. We have the power to end lineages that have survived for hundreds of millions of years, and we're exercising that power carelessly. But perhaps the most important lesson is about humility. These creatures were here long before us. They'll likely be here long after we're gone. They don't need us. We need them as parts of ecosystems we depend on, as sources of medicines and biomaterials, as living laboratories for studying evolution and adaptation. Most of all, we need them as reminders that we're part of something larger, something older, something more enduring than ourselves. When you stand at the edge of Shark Bay and look at stromatolites fizzing in the shallows, when you watch a horseshoe crab crawl onto a beach to spawn, when you observe a jellyfish pulse through the water, or a nautilus spiral through the depths, you're not just seeing an animal. You're seeing history. You're seeing evolution in action. You're seeing proof that life, once it takes hold, is remarkably persistent. A journey through time. As we near the end of our journey through deep time, it's worth pausing to reflect on the enormity of what we've explored. We've met creatures whose lineages stretch back billions of years, animals that have witnessed the entire span of complex life on Earth. We've seen that survival doesn't always favor the complex or the specialized, that sometimes simplicity and adaptability are the keys to endurance. The cyanobacteria still building stromatolites in Shark Bay are following protocols written into their genes billions of years ago. The sponges filtering water through their bodies are using a body plan that predates all other animals. The horseshoe crabs crawling onto beaches each spring are repeating a ritual performed for 445 million years. The jellyfish pulsing through the ocean are descendants of the first muscle-powered swimmers. The nautiluses spiraling through tropical seas carry shells designed in the Cambrian. The tardigrades waiting out dry spells in your backyard are using survival strategies older than most animal phyla. And somewhere in the Arctic depths, a Greenland shark that may have been born before the Industrial Revolution continues its patient hunt. These creatures are not relics. They're not evolutionary dead ends or failed experiments. They're successes, the most successful organisms Earth has ever produced, measured by the only metric that ultimately matters in evolution. They're still here. They've adapted without abandoning their fundamental design. They've survived without becoming something else entirely. In a world of constant change, where species go extinct at alarming rates and ecosystems collapse under human pressure, these ancient survivors remind us that life finds a way. Not always the way we expect, not always in the forms we recognize, but life persists. It adapts. It endures. As you drift off to sleep tonight, imagine the ancient seas these creatures inhabited. Imagine oceans lit by a younger sun, continents arranged in unfamiliar shapes, climates vastly different from today's. Imagine the trilobites and sea scorpions, the giant nautiloids and primitive fish, all long extinct now, while the humble jellyfish and the patient sponge swim on. Imagine time stretched to its limits, hundreds of millions of years compressed into the blink of an eye, or expanded into an eternity. And remember that we too are part of this story. We're made from the same elements forged in ancient stars. We share genes with sponges and jellyfish, echoes of our common ancestry written into our DNA. We depend on the oxygen that cyanobacteria pumped into the atmosphere billions of years ago. We're connected to these ancient creatures, not just through evolution, but through our shared existence on this small blue planet spinning through space. The story of Earth's oldest creatures is ultimately our story too. It's a story of survival and adaptation, of endurance and change, of life's remarkable ability to persist in the face of unimaginable challenges. It's a story that's still being written, with each generation of cyanobacteria and sponges and horseshoe crabs and jellyfish and nautiluses and tardigrades and Greenland sharks adding new chapters to an epic that's already billions of years old. If these videos help you unwind or give you a different way to think about the natural world, please consider subscribing to Bedtime Biology. Leave a comment below with your thoughts or suggestions for future topics. What other ancient wonders would you like to explore? What other quiet corners of the natural world call to you? For now, rest easy knowing that while you sleep, these ancient creatures continue their timeless routines, swimming and filtering and hunting and waiting, just as they have for hundreds of millions of years, just as they will for millions more to come. In their persistence, in their patient endurance, they carry a message across the ages that life, once begun, is not easily ended, that survival is written into the very fabric of living things, that the story continues, one generation after another, stretching back into the unimaginable past and forward into an unknowable future. Good night, and may you dream of ancient seas and patient survivors, of time measured in eons and life measured in endurance.